if you do want to be a business owner and you want to be passionate about it, then get involved and work with a business where you can learn from. Learn the financials, the P&L side of things, learn the staff training and staff performance and staff culture, and understand what goes into building an effective team. Welcome to our next episode of the Allied Health Warrior podcast series, and today I am so excited to have an old friend that we've just recently reconnected in the last few months, but Kieran Bairstow, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
Yeah, excellent. So Kieran, for the listeners out there, Kieran, qualified EP and physio, been 12 years in business, and the journey from being a single operator, clinic operator, to now having a big MDT 9 clinics is really mirrors the story of my personal background. And it's, as we want to say, congratulations and well done on really being a beacon to an industry of showing how proper clinical model can be rolled out and being successful. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So Kieran, it's an interesting story and how we met 8 years ago, almost to the day. Do you want to tell the story of?
Yeah, so I was in the Rio Olympics watching my younger brother Cameron play basketball for the Australian Boomers, and we were just at a barbecue after the game, and there was another tall fella sitting there with a cap on, and just introduced myself and said g'day, and Mark said that he was an exercise physiologist as well, and was setting up clinics in Sydney, and I think we connected on Facebook or something at the time. And
I think our story goes back a step. I stopped you in the street, you're wearing an Australian flag, and I offered you some tickets because I wanted to go to this barbecue with the family and friends of the basketball in somewhere in Copacabana Beach and on some rooftop. And
you've got a better memory than I do.
You said no thanks, I'm busy, and the next thing you know, we turn up and we're at the same barbecue. And just a great start to, and realizing there were similarities in what we were doing. And we definitely caught up. I was in Brisbane a couple of times and we caught up over coffee, and at that stage you were one clinic owner, and so in 8 years you've gone from one, and these days you own a company called Hiya Health, 9 clinics. Talk me through the journey over this last year, 8 years of from one single clinic to 9 clinics across Brisbane and the Gold Coast.
Yeah, it's definitely been a journey and a learning experience. Like for many of us who come from that clinical background, and then it's a bit of a baptism of fire stepping into being a business owner, but then really understanding like what are those levers that are going to actually drive a successful business in the allied health space. And I guess for me, there was probably an original motivation, particularly around thinking of allied health as, or needing to have a strong business model behind that clinical product that we're delivering to our communities was really important, because in some of my earlier roles, I'd seen great clinicians who perhaps didn't have strong businesses, and 3 of the businesses that I was working with in those early days actually went bankrupt and went bust as an employee and as an early career clinician. So seeing that experience, and but I think also the patients that are left without care and without the services they need because that business wasn't sustainable or wasn't robust, was probably a critical experience for me in those formative years, and kind of shaped what I think, or I guess why I saw that is really got to be a marriage between having some of those strong underpinnings of good business principles with great clinical practice to be able to deliver, strong, sustainable care into our communities.
Yeah, we'll come back and we'll talk a bit about the business side of things, and try to educate a little bit employees who are out there on the difficulties. But Talk me through now your philosophies around that patient-centered care model, because I think this is where we've spent the last 24 hours hanging together, and um, after not seeing each other for 6 years, we caught up 8 weeks ago for the first time. But what we really connect on is the patient-centered care model
Yeah.
philosophy, and so do you have some underlying philosophies or thoughts around that? When it comes to delivering that to the
Yeah.
client, to the patient, to the community, to the country.
Yeah, for sure. I think like a lot of us who've come through that probably more modern, like neuroscientific approach to what good rehab should look like, that biopsychosocial approach has always
Yeah,
been front and center. And how do you actually bring that out of a textbook and into the real world? And, again, coming through, there was a lot of uh, business models and clinical practices that I saw as not being aligned with what the evidence is actually showing us.
yeah,
So, looking at how we can deliver best practice and what I think a lot of us think allied health and, for me in particular, like physiotherapy should be in practice, which is movement centered, biopsychosocial approach where you're treating the person
yeah,
and not their health condition, has really been, I guess, a core value of mine. But really, what we've tried to um, build the entire business around is how do we actually deliver that into the real world. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we're healthcare clinicians, and being person centric is what we're here to do.
yeah,
And I think it does come to pretty much all allied health clinicians that caring for the person is at the heart of what we do.
yeah.
Um,
What do you think the gap is for young practitioners when they first venture into the clinical space? Like it's so funny, our journey into business have both started very much in the rehab space. We've now moved into more the therapeutical to create therapeutical intervention to create that true MDT.
yeah,
But what are the gaps of young? What is the gaps in young producers as they come from university out into the
yeah,
to the world, and how have you, from that model of what you're talking about, creating that patient centered,
yeah,
how is that? How have you been able to fulfill that in your business?
yeah. I guess I'd probably start off by saying, like, we've always had a fairly strong professional development program, and
Yeah,
that's always been just a core tenet of what we believe in terms of, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backwards. And that I think one of the things that can make this profession really fun and exciting um, and just stimulating is the fact that there's just an impossible amount of information to ever learn.
of course.
So that, you can really be learning for our entire lifetimes and our entire careers. And really that should never stop. Yeah. So I guess some of the gaps that I'd typically see with early career clinicians coming through is often there's a real motivation to educate people.
Yeah,
But where the rubber probably hits the road with that is people don't come in to see us to be educated. They come in to see us because they've got a problem
yeah,
and because they want help solving that. And sometimes when we're sitting there educating that person, they can actually feel that we're not listening to their problem and we're
yeah,
not actually um, hearing what they're saying.
yeah,
So I think for early career clinicians, kind of learning how to read between the lines and like it comes back to being a great communicator.
yeah.
And being a great communicator is you define it as being what message has someone heard as opposed to what's the message that someone said.
So, what role do you think you, as the company, as their employer in early, what role do you think you've got to play?
Yeah.
To upskill from
Yeah, totally.
day zero, graduating university, to getting to that point where you're
Yeah.
meeting those needs.
Yeah, I mean, we've spoken about this a fair bit. Because I'd see the biggest gap in early career clinicians typically not necessarily those technical clinical skills that You spent 4 years at uni,
Yeah,
like learning and developing and being assessed on and brushing up on. But it's really about how you apply those into practice.
yeah,
And the core skill really comes back to how well are you able to communicate and articulate your message
yeah.
and why someone should do what we all know they should do.
Yeah, I tell a story all the time. I talk about like in your local health club, your Good Life or your Fitness First or whatever, and you go in and you see personal trainers, they're not practitioners, but personal trainers that you walk in and you shake your head at their clinical ability of what we would say clinical, but techniques are wrong.
Yeah,
Yet they always have a full caseload. They always have, you know, despite the fact they injure their people, they keep coming back and they're making good money because they're just amazingly great people that know how to sell themselves. They've got a personality that attracts
yeah,
people to them. And, yet they don't have the knowledge of what, us as clinicians do, but yet they're able to meet the need,
yeah,
that biosocial aspect of community in there. And that's an extreme example, but if you can put that ability, those professional skills into a form of, and then put the clinical knowledge and behind you, that's when you become a superstar
yeah,
practitioner because people want to come and see you.
yeah,
By attendance and seeing a rehab program through to the end, you can actually get results because,
yeah,
how many people stop before the end of their treatment plan?
yeah, for sure. I remember there's one study where they're looking at American physical therapists, and it was a study looking at what people valued out of that rehab experience.
Yeah,
And really, what they showed is patients didn't really care about clinical competence or clinical skills as long as their clinician was competent.
yeah,
And like that competence is just, it's the box you've got to tick if you want to play the game. But what they really cared about is how much did they want to get out of bed to come and see that therapist?
yeah,
Did they feel that that therapist listened and heard what they said?
yeah,
And that was actually cited as being the most valuable part of that therapeutic alliance or that therapeutic relationship
yeah.
was being heard and really being understood
Because
by that therapist.
if you're competent as a clinician, you'll eventually solve the problem.
Yeah.
you know. So, but in the end, not what you got to get them to do, but how you get them to do it. Often
Yeah.
is the key, and we can go on to this topic for ages, but
Yeah. But I think we can probably both, and I think most of the listeners can probably all relate to someone who is just a brilliant clinician in terms of their knowledge base, in terms of their technical skill, their diagnostic ability. But some of those
yeah,
people don't necessarily have
yeah,
the best rapport building skills and don't
and
have,
wonder why they don't retain clients, and wonder why they're always struggling to,
yeah,
you know, they get perceived to be pushed in a direction because their billables aren't high enough, but that ability to maintain an existing caseload is a lot easier than continually replacing and doing initial assessments
yeah,
every single every single week. And professional skills plus clinical skills make great practitioners.
yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned before how you're in a situation where early on in your career, a couple of businesses that you work for shut down, and we're probably seeing that in the NDIS space now as um, hearing of NDIS businesses that are dropping the allied health arm. But we were talking before about just the costs of how expensive it is to own a business. Salaries have gone, almost doubled in 10 years. There was a time where speech and OT, 65K was 10 years ago was the maximum you could earn. Your chances of getting a full-time job out of university was zero. You had to really work your way, and now 105 to 120 is the top, for an experienced practitioner. And the costs of salaries have gone up, let alone the inflation of rents and facilities of billing. Most practitioners don't understand the cost that goes into the business, and
Yeah.
how are you able to be so successful now, 9 clinics, and be able to be successful in as a business people? What do you think those philosophies come down to?
I definitely think it's an education process. And again, no different than myself as an early career
Yeah,
clinician and, working really hard and being really passionate about um, like the rehab units that I was a part of, but then watching them go under. And, um, anecdotally, it's like I'm aware of 6 providers in Queensland who are currently um, like in bankruptcy proceedings.
yeah,
And it simply comes down to, balancing your budget like any household budget where you've got, what's your revenue coming in and what are the costs going out. And if those numbers don't stack up, then particularly in business, you can be in trouble pretty quickly.
yeah.
Um, yeah. And I mean, we're all feeling the pain of, cost of living crisis and just inflation more broadly. And that's definitely affected a lot of businesses where, um, the fee per attendance hasn't necessarily gone up in relation to those wage costs. Hasn't gone up in relation to, increased electricity costs.
So yeah, so what we talked about the challenges but the we've seen the industry change. I've talked about this in a previous podcast here on the Allied Health Warrior, but we've seen absolute the industry change the patient care model
Yeah.
to become a more financial model by
Yeah.
in-home only care. Why has that not been something that have made the change to go down? Why do you really hold the integrity of what you were saying before?
Yeah. I mean, I think personally, just philosophically, it doesn't align with what I think is best practice
Yeah.
and what I think actually benefits the clients that we see. And on one hand, I totally understand that some of those home care providers can provide accessibility for clients who might find it challenging
Yeah.
to get into a clinic environment. But my personal belief is that the best place to do rehab is in a rehabilitation facility
Course.
where you have all the bells and whistles and you have your rehab gym and all the tools and equipment to allow your clinicians to do the best work that they possibly can.
Yeah.
And I think it's impossible to replicate that in someone's home. So while I see that some of those community-based models where you're out in the car can work well doing assessments, it can work well in short-term interventions. But if you're actually wanting long-term results and, wanting to see those incremental
Yeah.
changes, it's the same reason why a lot of us go to the gym, because it's the environment that we're stepping
Yeah.
into, and stepping into that environment where you have a culture, where you have, just the right setting for you to do that thing that helps you take care of yourself. You need the right space to do that.
Yeah, this in-home model is almost facilitating everything the NDIS is trying to avoid. One of the biggest goals for everyone in their plan is community engagement.
Yeah.
And when you're getting your treatment done, it's actually facilitating the opposite of what happens. Let alone the lack of budget, how far the budget goes towards getting treatment outcomes. The extra cost associated with it, and it's just for me it's such a burden on the industry that it's across. Now we agree, like in my business, about most of our practitioners have about a 15% in-home based caseload. They'll come and go from the clinic, but they're not traveling all around Sydney
Yeah.
to go and spending all their time in their car. It's a very local people who genuinely need it. What's your message for that young practitioner who's got that aspirations of owning their own business? Like what do you, because it's a true pathway for people to be business owners, and it doesn't matter what industry you are. It's a challenge, but it's if you're successful, it can be rewarding. What's your message to the young practitioner wanting to own?
I came from the farm in terms of like my grandfather and all my uncles, and spent a lot of time out there as a kid.
Where
And
did you grow up?
well, it was outside of Warwick.
Oh yeah.
But my grandfather used to say this about the land, which is you've either got to love it or you've got to be crazy. And that is something I'd definitely say in
in
terms of
business.
if you're going into this because you think I'm going to, because I want to make money or because
I'm going to have an easier
I'm,
lifestyle.
I'm going to have a better
I can work
lifestyle,
part time.
it's probably not the right choice for you.
Yeah.
But if you're really passionate about effectively making the change that you want to see, or I think for a lot of us, it's like probably seeing a model that isn't quite right and then wanting to actually make that happen. Like being passionate about what you do
Yeah.
and really loving what you do is what's going to, keep getting you out of bed every morning, even though it's going to be trepidations at times.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. You've either got to love it or got to be crazy. And that probably sums up being a business owner, because business is difficult. And I think that's my message I want to tell out there is, and if you're going to do it properly, there's costs that you're not going to get the return on immediately.
Yeah.
And I think the industry feels at the moment that I'm a business owner because I became a contractor, or I'm a business owner because I've, gone and been an independent sole trader. But, the barrier to entry in this community only based model seems low, but being a business owner where you're building a proper clinic, and with the changes that are happening, we both believe that we're going to see a big shift back to the clinic-based model, which is what I believe is the best patient care. So I want to encourage, if you do want to be a business owner and you want to be, passionate about it, then get involved and work with a business where you can learn from, learn the financials, the P&L side of things, learn the staff training and staff performance and staff culture, and understand what goes into building an effective team, and understand where the true costs are, and learn why you're earning money. I think that's it. Now, that might be 2 or 3 years, or it might be 5 to 10 years, depending on when you are ready. And I think that's my message to the industry.
I'd probably also say, though, having that entrepreneurial spark or that entrepreneurial mindset doesn't mean that you necessarily have to start something on your own, because something that I definitely felt in those early years is it's really lonely.
Yeah.
And you are on your own a lot, and you're staying up till 2 a.m. sometimes trying to get paperwork done, trying to get whatever done because that's what's called for. Whereas sometimes, and being able to become a part of something bigger where you might have a smaller slice of the pie, but it's actually a bigger
Guaranteeing
pie.
success.
And it's also being able to do that with a team around you where you're sharing those ups and downs and those challenges and just the grind and the work. That's kind of also what makes it fun, is doing it with people and being on that journey together. So,
and you've got that pathway at Hiya Health. Have you to be able to step into that ownership and partner with you guys?
Yeah. So we've definitely, it's been, again, a learning experience, but really building out our career pathways and providing those opportunities for highly motivated clinicians who some clinicians want to move down that clinical expertise pathway and, really become subject matter experts in that area. They're really
education thing.
Totally. We've also got our clinical education pathway, but then we do have a business management where we've got clinic managers who are learning about the business, who do take on responsibility and really that ownership over that site, which, there is that pathway to move into, being that business owner, but still having the support and the team around you. So, you're not sitting there at 2 a.m. Punching out reports on a Saturday night.
Doing the financials to make your BAS and
For sure.
and things like that. We caught up for a lunch 6 weeks ago, and then have spent 24 hours together. And every challenge that we've had in our businesses, you talk about challenge, and I go, well, we're exactly gone through. I say, we talk about software, and you go, we've just gone through that process. It's literally 15 to 20 tick boxes where it's what our problems are your problems, what your problems are our problems, and it's uncanny. Like we've just shaken our heads and gone, well, how parallel the message is. And I think the message I have is business is business, and no matter what you are, you're going to have those challenges, and you've got to invest in. Just did an exercise before about how our back office costs have increased as we've grown, and you know I know my company has in excess of over $3 million of wages in back office, and you guys were something similar. And it's just realizing the support that you've got to give, and as you grow, and in order to create a patient-centered care
Yeah.
model business, it is. And yeah, but it's rewarding. So what's some of the rewarding side of the being a business owner for yourself?
I think what's been awesome is just seeing the team grow, and there's a few examples I can think of without naming names, but watching, say, like one of our business partners now who's come into the business originally as a prac student,
Yeah.
and I remember this person, because at the time we were setting up a new facility,
Yeah.
and that required us to take apart an old gym and to reposition it into the new clinic. And this prac student was there working all Friday, pushed into Friday night, and we ended up finishing at like 11 p.m. or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. And he was still there with us,
In his first few weeks of being a
helping out as
student.
a prac student. And he did that because he wanted to put his best foot forward um, to get a grad role with us.
Yeah.
And as those grad roles came around, it was just a no-brainer
Yeah.
because, you know, you knew the quality and just the commitment that this person bring.
Yeah.
But then, over the past 7 years, seeing him grow and develop, and the passion that he brings to work every day still, as he's stepping into what his ultimate goal has been, which is to become a business owner.
Yeah.
So seeing that growth has been
Yeah. We've got the
pretty
same
amazing.
story. We just 7th of October, one of my staff, he started as a graduate with us, but he, just at 7th of October opened his clinic in partnership with my company. And it's that same story. You just watch that complete evolution from novice to
Yeah,
being a business owner. And I think whether it's at that level or just seeing practitioner go from nervous, anxious to really confident in their ability to be able to perform clinically, whether it's, they start to lead people in management responsibilities, anytime you can progress people. And I think that's, as a practitioner, we did it with our patients and our clients, but as business owners, we also do it with staff. And I
yeah,
think
for
that's
sure.
been my big evolution as a business owner, of just how much enjoyment I get out of seeing, the staff, move forward. And
Yeah,
that's my ultimate goal, is to create career pathways for them. Because if I can do that, they're going to look after the patient.
yeah. I think as therapists, like what always lit me up was watching someone grow and
Yeah.
seeing over time how someone's able to do something they didn't think they were ever going to be able to do again.
Yeah.
And it's really no different in terms of, seeing that growth and development with your team, in terms of, from humble beginnings, or from stepping in and, being like a bit of a deer in headlights at times as a graduate, but then, you know, finding your feet and building your confidence and that self-efficacy, and then, giving things a go, and then taking that next step and seeing that growth over time is, probably what
Yeah.
I love about the industry.
We've sort of seen the corporatization of
Yeah.
this allied health space, and I'll start by saying that's naturally comes in all industries but with the NDIS in particular, we've seen that happen in the last 8 years. What's very clear about you is that what's really drives me, and I can see, is that your ability to put staff, which then leads to putting the patient first. And I think we both play the long game in this
Yeah,
thing. It's not just about how much money can we take out of the system in the shortest possible time. It's about building a sustainable model, and that really motivates me to see someone like yourself. And so I want to really give you a shout out to go. You got a peer in the industry that believes in that in a world where the money guys, the private equity guys are coming in, and some of them are developing
yeah,
really good visions, but there's others that are, you know,
short-term
putting the
players.
short-term players, putting the money side of things first. And so, as reconnected, after firstly meeting 8 years ago, but in the last couple of months, it's just want to really keep encourage you to, fight on to be example to the industry, and it sounds like you guys are solving the problems and the challenges are real. But really want to say congratulations for everything that you've accomplished. One last thing: is there anything else you want to add or leave the listeners with a message?
Message. I'd just say for any clinicians out there, it is a journey. And like we were speaking about earlier, I think the beauty of this industry is there's so much to learn. And that journey, as long as, you're researching, learning, growing, and really taking what you're learning and applying it to practice every day, that's what will keep it fresh and fun. So I'd really, implore everyone to never stop learning. And, um, I think the more you put into it, the more you get out of it.
Sounds
So
like very sound advice. Kieran, thank you, mate. Like, thanks for coming. Thanks for spending some time in Sydney with me over the last 24 hours, and just really hate taking that time to learn each other's businesses. But thank you for joining us today on the Allied Health Podcast. I think there's some valuable insights for young practitioners out there.
my pleasure, Mark. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.